Todd to say hello.
Hi, thank you. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Todd Evans, Director of Professional Development for Pro Literacy, and my colleague, Patty Celadon, who's the Professional Development Online Course Designer at Pro Literacy. We are very excited about this partnership as well. It's a great opportunity for both of our organizations that did a lot of work in the spring to help folks kind of implement very quickly distance learning and distance education strategies. And so to be able to combine that work is great. Patty and I are going to be doing the Q&A session this at the end of the webinar. So we'll talk to you more then. And I'm going to turn things back over to Jen and Victoria.
Great. So my colleague Victoria Neff is going to do a little run through on the webinar features for you now.
Hi everyone. So for those of you that are not familiar with Zoom, you'll find the Zoom webinar controls at the bottom of your screen. We ask you to use the chat to introduce yourself, share any comments, but please use the Q&A box for any questions that you have for Helaine as she's presenting. And if you're having any technical issues with Zoom, any audio issues, you can chat me directly, and you can find me in the chat by clicking on my name and just chatting with me directly. If you're having any issues, you can also email me. My email is on the screen there. I'm also going to chat a link that's a Zoom support link that might be helpful in case you want to troubleshoot some of the audio issues on your own. And just another quick reminder is that we will be sharing the recording of the webinar as well as the slide deck resources and other items that we share out in the Q&A with you all. And we'll also be sending out a certificate next week. So now I'm going to turn it back to Jen, who's going to go through the agenda for today.
Yeah, so this is a format that blends the work that Pro Literacy was doing in the fall or in the spring and summer with what we were also doing in the spring and summer with our distance education support. And essentially we have an expert come in, an innovator come in and share that innovation in a very short presentation that just gets to highlights. And then really at least half of the time is going to be devoted to discussing your questions. So that you get that just-in-time, really relevant information that you need in order to implement this in your work. So you'll see on the next slide that we are going to be repeating this format. You can go to the next slide, Victoria. We're going to be repeating this format every fourth Friday, where we will feature an innovator and give you plenty of time to ask questions. In addition, both Pro Literacy, with the work that Todd and Patty do, and the work that Victoria and I do at the EdTech Center, we have support, technical support, and resource websites. Maybe we can get those chatted in the next few minutes so that you know where to go and get additional resources. So you don't have to wait until the end of October to get some new ideas. So with that, I would like to start today's presentation by introducing Helaine Marshall. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, it is my pleasure to introduce Helaine Marshall today. I first became familiar with Helaine's work when I was teaching at the University of Minnesota, and we were integrating teacher education into our ESL certification program and how to support learners who had limited and interrupted formal education. So a lot of, I live and work in Minneapolis, as you might know, we have a large refugee population here, many coming from places where they didn't have an opportunity to do formal learning. And the work of Andrea De Capua and Helaine Marshall around SLIFE support and the MALP, the mutually adaptive, actually, Helaine, I'm blanking on the
learning paradigm.
Yes, learning paradigm. Yes, so helpful. And so no surprise that Helaine has taken that innovative spirit and been rethinking how to do flipped learning in these times when we have to all work remotely. So I, for one, am very excited about today's presentation, and I welcome you, Helaine. Thanks for being here.
Okay, well, thanks to all of you. And it's so interesting because usually you think of someone professionally in the way that you first met them, and then they're not allowed to be an expert on anything else. So it's so funny. Some people think of me only as, not only, it's wonderful, my work with Hmong refugees in Wisconsin, and other people are like, oh, she's that online lady who flips. I'm both. I'm both. Okay.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Excellent.
All right. So, so as we start here, I'm going to need you to, let's see, advance. Let's see if I can do it. I think am I clicking okay? Did I click that? Okay. All right. So this is the Synchronous Online Flip Learning Approach, but it's going to be lightning round. Okay. So for those of you who want something more in depth, I have a follow-up plan, and you'll see more about what that is as we go forward. All right. So we're going to start with our first poll. If my helpers there could launch the poll, the first poll, please, because I don't have access to polls on my screen. So if you could launch, thank you. If you could launch the first poll and just relax and be honest, it's anonymous, and we're going to go very fast through these. There are only 3 polls, interspace. Did you do the pre-work? Yes, part of it. May look at it later, and nah, too busy for that. Okay, please vote. Okay, everybody vote. So we're looking for almost 300 people. Let's get those responses. Okay, so so while you're doing that, while you're answering the poll, I think Todd already said this, but I would like to say it also. Please, if you haven't done this, or if you're coming in now, I'd like to see your teaching context. And what I mean by that is something very specific. We're all doing work with adults. So be very specific, but be very brief. Be very brief. And I'll tell you why. I'm going to use the information that you put in the chat to put you in groups later, not during this session, but when we meet in the follow-up session in Perusal. I'll explain that later. This is a beginning, not the end. We're going to work together if you choose to. And if I'll be there. So I need to know what group to put you in. We're going to have you in small discussion groups in a site that I will show you where we can work together on into the future. Okay, so that's going to happen. All right, we need the results of the poll. I need to see the results of the poll. We can, let's see how many people voted. Oh, quite a few of you, but not all of you. All right, we don't have time to wait. So we're going to close the poll and share the results. Could we do that? Close the poll.
Yes, so the poll is closed and we stopped sharing, or we should be sharing the results with folks.
Okay, good. Okay, results. So we see that we have 24% yes. Actually, I've done this many, many times. It's always about 1/3. You guys are 1/4, but you're a lot of people. So that's okay. It's good. And some of you did part of it. So if we add part and yes, we're okay. May look at it later. Great. I hope you do, because there's a lot of good information there, and it's all shared and transparent with you. I'll talk about that in a minute. Nah, too busy for that. Well, you're lost, but you would be amazed what's there. Even if you don't answer the questions, you can look at the responses of everybody else. Okay, now let's move forward. I think I do need help advancing the slides. Thank you. Okay, so I'd like to talk for a minute about change. So what you guys are doing is you're learning something new and you're changing. And I thought if we went back to Darwin, please read the quote to yourselves. Okay, so David Rosen, who runs the technology group in Links community. If you're not familiar with Links, you should be. It's our adults learner space. You'd really enjoy it. It's been there for years and years. It keeps morphing. But anyway, David Rosen, if you don't know him, he's a good source. I think the World Ed folks probably do know David. Anyway, he came up with a wonderful framework, and click. I'm not able to click. It's funny. Oh, there we are. Okay. First click is equivalencies. Okay. What he said is that some things will be able to do the same as we've always done when we change. We don't have to change everything. Baby in the bathwater. The second is that some things are limitations. We won't be able to do the same exactly. And the third is advantages. There are going to be some things we can do we couldn't do before. So be open to that. And those were his 3, and I added a 4th to it. And there's a discussion you can read if you go in there. He and I talk a bit about this. There might be things you can do now that you couldn't do before. So be open to that too, all right? So as we go through, please think about everything I tell you in terms of equivalencies, limitations, advantages, and innovations. And now I'd like to share with you, I can't share while someone else is sharing. So I need to be able to share while other people are sharing. And I need that ability. You just, you go to advanced options under screen sharing, under participants, I think, or screen sharing, and you give me ability to share. So I need to be sharing my screen throughout.
Great. So Helaine, I'm going to stop share. Are you ready to share your screen?
Yes. Okay, good. Okay, all right. Good. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm going to be showing you a lot of things during this presentation. This is what you answered for one of the questions on the pre-work. So we can see that 40% of the participants who responded, and it was about 70 of you. So that's what I counted, whoever came in by last night. So many of you are just starting, and I understand that. A good number used it, some have really taught, and then you have, can teach others, a little sliver of you. Would you please indicate in the chat if you're one of the people in the green area, because we want to draw on your expertise. So you can just put green, and then everyone will know they can contact you because we have your name. If you are green, and you don't have to have responded, it doesn't matter, just put green if you can mentor. Those are the people you can rely on, guys. It's not just me. Look at your green people, okay? I don't know what other is. That's something else again. Okay, now let's go back to the PowerPoint, which I think, let's see if I can I be the one to share that? Or
you should be able to now, yes.
Yeah, but it depends on what I'm on here. Yeah, I'm kind of making lemonade. Share content. No, I'm not able because I'm sharing the other screen. Resume share. Yeah, I'm going to need you to share. We even have to go back and forth. We'll do it. Okay, so so now what I'd like to do is talk to you about flipped learning a little bit, because that's the starting point. So we have the next poll. Now, get ready to put something in the chat. You're going to be putting a lot of stuff in the chat during this. And it doesn't mean 300 people have to put something in the chat, but try to participate. You'll enjoy it. Okay, and you can always save the chat. You'll have lots of stuff in the chat. So here's the next poll. Poll number 2. Poll number 2, could you bring it up? Good. How familiar are you with flipped learning? Never heard of it but not sure, know what it is and have used it, can mentor others. Okay, please answer. Answer. It doesn't matter whether you did the pre-work. Don't worry about that. We're not thinking about that yet. Okay, so just answer about flipped learning. Now, while the people are answering the poll in the chat, if you answered either of the 2 middle questions, not never heard of it and not can mentor, stay out of it, you green people who mentor, okay? Okay, and they, of course, not online learning, flipped learning, okay? So you've heard of it, but you're not sure what it is, or you know what it is and you've used it. Would you please, in the chat, put one thing you know, not the whole thing, one thing you know about flipped learning, put it in the chat so the new people can see a little bit, because I'm not training you on flip today. So let's get some answers in the chat. So you're doing 2 things. We're multitasking. So am I, by the way. We're multitasking. Put whatever you know, one thing you know. We know you know more, but one thing you know. Put anything you know. If you're in category heard of or know what it is. Mentors, stay off. And if you never heard of it, it's okay. We know. We don't need to have that in the chat. Okay, great. All right. And when we get the answers, on the poll, do we have the answers? Enough people? Do we have enough people to share?
We do.
Okay,
and
great.
Should be sharing it now.
Okay, great. So, wow, 37% never heard of flipped learning. Okay. Oh, I'm so excited because I'm the first person you're going to hear about, flipped learning about. So, okay, that's great. Well, I discovered it in 2011. And the minute I heard it, I said, I have to jump on board. And again, as I said, this is not a session on flipping. But what I can tell you, oh, did you share it? You shared the results? Have you shared
I did, yes.
Yeah, okay. So, so we have a lot of people in the middle. And again, could you put green flip, if you can mentor others? There are only 5 people. Please put green flip, green flip. See, what I'm trying to do here is build your own local capacity, not local because you're all over the world. We'll see that in a minute, but find out who can help you. This is important. You're building a community here. You know, you got to be able to work together. See, I'm sure you already do locally, but this is your opportunity to draw on each other. Okay. All right. So you have the results of that poll. Now we're going to look at these 4 questions. So let's look at the 4 questions very quickly. Okay. So if you're going to flip, you have to ask what you're going to move. And by the way, if you don't know anything about flip learning, read all the answers in the chat. If you read everything on the chat, you'll know by the time you finish reading what everyone put, you'll see what flipping basically is. Okay, so one of the things you have to know is what are you going to move out of class, or what are you going to move in class, okay? Then for the out of class, you have to make sure they understand and retain what you're providing. You have to make sure you maximize that. Also in class, that's your chance to interact and differentiate. You want to make sure you're maximizing that. And then in both the out of and in class elements, you have to make sure you build in 2 things, accountability and feedback. So if you want to read more, there's a link going in the chat for Marshall and Paris. We just wrote an article about nuts and bolts of flip learning. So if you want to get started, read this article, and it talks about the 4 questions. And that link is going in the chat. We'll have a lot of links going in the chat. In fact, actually that's a different link, but I'm glad you put it because I forgot about that link. My very first article on SOFLA, just so you have a little history here. My first article on SOFLA was 2017 when I first talked about SOFLA on a blog post, okay? A blog post, okay? So, so that's the first time that I talked about SOFLA. So I just saw something in the chat. 37% of us have no idea what you're talking about. Interesting, because SOFLA kind of builds on flipped learning. So it's a synchronous online flipped learning approach. So we take flipped learning and move it online and introduce synchronous elements. So I normally have a few slides on what flipped learning is, but I've got such limited time here, I decided not to do that. If you look in the chat, but I see some of you, I'm getting the frustration, so okay. So flipped learning is essentially moving the delivery of content and instructions and anything else that you can move out of class, you move it out. And we'll see that when we look at the pre-work element of SOFLA. We talk about how to flip and what to flip in an online setting, okay? And then your entire class is interactive. Now, someone said they're already doing that. Several of you said, that's the way we teach anyway. Well, you think so, but you'd be surprised how much of your time is actually teacher talk, and we're trying to get the teacher talk out of there, okay? So basically that's what it is. So your entire time with students can be productive in terms of language and interaction and clarification, application, the upper levels of Bloom, if you're familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, the lower levels of Bloom, where you're giving them basic instructions, simple things, not simple, we know for them, not simple, but things that they can access on their own by watching, reading, and interacting asynchronously with you, not at the same time as you. Those things they will be able to do out of class on their own, at their own pace, rewind, pause, or go back in the reading, talk to each other in the reading, and you'll see all that when I go forward to SOFLA. So if you feel like it's a little too quick on flip, we're gonna actually go through a flip learning model, 8 steps, and you'll see much more about flip learning that way. Okay, all right, so, so keep these questions in mind as I introduce SOFLA. Let's move to SOFLA now. Okay, these are the 8 steps of SOFLA. These are the 8 steps of SOFLA, 1 through 8. And you can see them either in a linear way, or as we just saw, you can see them in a cyclical way. So these are the 8 steps. And in this limited time, it's going to be very difficult to go and really get into each step in detail. But I'm going to do the lightning round of the 8 steps of SOFLA. I do have other versions that are a 2-hour training, a 15-hour module. I have tons of other ways to get much more into this, but this is lightning. So here we go. All right, and that's a link. You're going to get a link to the article by me and by Ilka Kostka that just came out in August. So you can look at that. That's an article, brand new article that you can look at. And the link is in the chat to that article. Ilka Kostka, Marshall and Kostka. You can't see anything on the screen. Can't see anything on this. Okay, sorry. Okay, you should see SOFLA on the screen. Okay, so so Ilka and I published this article, and that's the article you want to read. That's 2020. So for the pre-work, I gave you the original articles because I'm just giving you a taste, not the whole deal. But once you're finished this session, you can do the whole thing. You can do all 8 steps in great detail. It's written for language teachers, not necessarily adult literacy. And we'll come to that as we go through the presentation. Okay, so, so now we're going to talk about these steps. So I'm kind of thinking a little bit, you notice that the pre-work is yellow. In the lower corner, I have each step as we go through it. It's yellow because that's the link, that's the linchpin. If the pre-work doesn't happen, the model doesn't happen. And a lot of you were asking, I have all your questions in advance here. A lot of you were asking about the pre-work and what happens if they don't do the pre-work. So let me say that the entire thrust of SOFLA is to make sure they have buy-in on the pre-work. And I'm going to give you lots of ways during this presentation of how to make that happen, or in perusal afterwards. Okay, whatever you give them to do out of class, and by the way, if you really have difficulty, they can do it in class in stations while you work with other students. And you should do it with them in class first anyway, until they're comfortable doing it out of class. I wouldn't start with it out of class. You have to teach them how to do flipping. Okay, so we start with this. It has to be in explicit instruction. It's your lesson, basically, your mini lesson. What are you working with them on that day? It has to be structured, interactive, multimodal, and you have to build in questions. When I do it with my students, they always say, I'm so glad you asked us questions, because I can't just stare at a video. I don't learn that way. And the same thing with a reading. I can't just be told to go home and read something. But if you embed questions along as I read, not at the end, but inside the reading, you build activities and questions inside the reading and inside your video lesson. Very important. And then what's beautiful is you can download the data and find out what they all said. And you don't make it, you know, it's not anonymous, because you're grading them and you're seeing what each one knows, so you can differentiate, but they don't know who put what. Okay. All right. So, so what did I do with you? Okay, let's click that. The next slide. Okay, good. All right, so this is what I did with you, and then I'm going to share my screen again for a minute. Okay, so in a minute. So what I did with you was I started with a video introduction. It's always good to do that and tell them what they're going to be doing. Okay, so here's your pre-work. I did that with you. Then I asked your pressing issue. Why is that important? Well, you always want students to, you want them to have priorities. What's their priority? What is it that they really think they need to learn? Remember, the syllabus is in the learner. The next is an idea you already have. Well, it's good to get their prior knowledge activated, so that's what I did there with you. Then I asked you for a successful experience as a learner, and that's more for you. In fact, all of this is for professional development. It's not necessarily for your actual students, but I wanted you to experience pre-work, okay? So I asked you as a learner, because you need to wear both hats always as a teacher. You need to say, how would it look from my perspective? Even though you have a very different perspective from your students, if you at least think of yourself with a learner hat, or even a learner hat for you when you had to struggle to learn something new. Maybe for you it was math. Okay, just saying. Then I asked you, where do you live? Why? Because it's always good to get some fun data. So with that, I would like to show you a little map I made, and I'm going to share the screen there, or someone's going to unshare so I can share. There we go. And I'm going to show you this. I made a map. Now I made it, everybody's seeing the map? I made a map last night. So if you told me this morning, sorry, you're not there, but look at the far field. We've got people from all the way from QC, and you can click. This is an interactive map. There you are. And then down here we have Okay, so you can get wonderful data. This is just a fun one, but you can do anything you want in terms of collecting data in the pre-work, okay? And now we'll go back, okay? So I think, did we go back? I'm sorry, this is really hellish for me. Okay, so good. And then I asked for an insight from your reading. Now that one is accountability. You have to have accountability. So you couldn't have given me an insight if you hadn't done the reading at all. Now you can be much more specific, like I said, with your students and ask specific questions. With you, I kind of just want to know what sticks from the reading, and I got some amazing data. And having said that, I just want to show you quickly, and we'll put in the chat the link. You guys can go and look at each other's data. So I need to just share it again, please. There we go. And I want to share this time, I want to share the responses. So with the responses, I just want to, oh, that's not going to work. Okay, so let's see, do you see, wait. You should see the responses. So I asked, what is your most pressing issue? And look at all the answers. We're not going to talk about this. We don't have time. But then I asked, in addition, I asked you one idea you already have. I asked about your most successful experience. And I asked an insight from the reading. I also asked you for a question. We'll talk about that later. But look at the responses, all of your responses. And remember, you have access to all 80, I don't know when I last looked, the ones with small type, I didn't even get to, yeah, a lot of you came in at the last minute before I could make it big so I could see it. Okay, okay. Anyway, you have the link, it's in the chat. You guys can look at what you all came up with. Look at what you've got. You've got a rich array of ideas about pressing issues. You can use that for your PD things that you put together, your learning community. You've already got here your ideas and your experience as learners, your insights. Okay, so that's all for you. And you can add people who said they don't have time to do the pre-work. You can go in and add yourself anytime. I keep responses open always. Okay, and now we'll go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, great. All right, we go back. Did we go back? This is so confusing for me.
Yes, I'm going.
Okay.
I'm going back, Helaine. Sorry, I'm not as fast as you.
Okay. All right. No, I need it to go boom, boom. Okay. All right. Now, whoop, we're not there yet. Hang on. Let me get to that. Okay. All right. So, so the next slide, we're going to see the next step. Let me see what I got here. Okay, we're up to step 2, and I'm afraid it's 1:30, and I'm doing the best I can.
We're fine,
Okay.
Helaine. We're fine.
Well, you're fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
Helaine, it's your time. It's your time. So,
Yeah, it's your time.
Okay.
Take as long as
Right.
you want.
Okay. Now, my first question to you, and you don't have to all 300 say yes, just think in your head, did I give you a sign-in? Here's a sign-in. And now for me, I put in brackets what I do in my class. I teach teacher education. I teach you guys. This semester, I'm teaching grammar for teachers, and I'm teaching literacy methods for teachers. So obviously, my class is going to look different. You have to think in your head, of course, her class looks different. Now, I did do exactly what you do for many, many years, but I haven't taught them. I don't have them now. It's in the last few years. You got to think. So you can ask about a video. Think about the blah, blah video for this week. What surprised you, puzzled you, inspired you? That's a great sign-in. The sign-in can be in a chat. It could be in a whiteboard in your application. It could be a whiteboard in a doc or any place. It could be on the phone. Doesn't matter where it is. But they answer your question and they see each other's. This is totally transparent, the sign-in. And often I ask them about the reading. So here, of course, it was a complicated question. But you can ask them a question about the reading. The next is you also can do affective factors. Affective factors are important because they're always the elephant in the room. We know what the elephant is today, or one of the elephants. Okay, next is ask them, and this one I actually did ask my students, what is one new thing? Sorry, thing, it was late last night. What is one new thing you learned to do this week with technology? They love that question because they start sharing with each other, who knows how to do this? Who knows how to do that? Oh, I want to try it. And they came up with some wonderful ideas, something about boom, which I never heard of myself. And I said, teach us boom, and boom, they did. Okay. Anyway, I think you know what the sign-in was. Maybe someone can put in the chat, just a couple people. What was my sign-in for you today? All right. And then now we're going to go I just want to mention if one thing you could say, I also asked them, how are you feeling tonight? And they all said exhausted, etc. And then we worked on synonym. I had to say, what could you teach with this? And they gave me a long thing of what they could teach. Different people, everybody, the whole class came up with ideas, and someone said synonyms. And I thought, what a great idea. You know, tired, exhausted. Well, okay. So there's a lot you can do as a sign-in. If we did like a food pyramid lesson, the CEO of Whole Foods last night came up with the fact that nutrition is an issue in this country, and it's because of difficult and poor choices with nutrition. So that's definitely something you could look at. So let's say you did a little video lesson in reading at their level on food pyramid. You could ask for sign-in, put in which type of food based on my little video for you. Which type do you like best? That's all. Simple sign-in. It's got to be very quick. Okay, let's go to the next step. Okay, the next step is whole group application. Whole group application is a dangerous step. Inexperienced SOFLA teachers teach. That's not what this is. You taught already your lessons outside. What you're doing here is based on the answers they gave you and the things they said in the shared reading, you clarify. You clarify for them. Or if they're clear, you move on. If there's certain ones that individually need help, that's individual. But this is for the whole class. So most of your students need to either move on with the material or they really need to revisit. And this happens to all teachers. And everybody participates. Usually they participate on a shared document, but that doesn't have to be. It could be a chat box. It can be out loud. So if you were doing like a food pyramid, you might do something, or a nutrition. You might have them list everyone lists some foods you know in English, okay? Or if it's GED, just whatever, what foods you know. And then you can say, okay, everybody take this and organize them into categories. Well, they're showing they understand the concept, and they're also learning categorization, and they're also getting vocabulary from each other. That's 3 schemata. I have a whole session on schema theory. Okay, next. I'm trying to go. Let's go. Okay, breakouts. We're not doing that today, but it's really important to do breakouts unless you're doing tutoring, and I know a lot of you are because I read your stuff. Tutors, step aside. I'm talking to classes. Okay, they love the breakouts. Believe it or not, they don't want you all the time. They're very isolated at home right now. They have their family, they have their teacher, but they don't have each other. It's very important. But when you send them away, you say, oh, what could they possibly do? Believe me, they can. So with a food pyramid, they could plan a meal together. Each group could plan a meal and be able to defend that it's a balanced meal. I'm just giving you like out of the blue, like one idea. You could put hundreds of ideas in the chat. In a longer session, you would have to. We would do much, much more to get you to put something together. But anyway, you probably know how to do this kind of teaching. You can do jigsaw, same activity. You know all this. And you want to make sure there's accountability built in, like I said at the beginning, but you can choose how to group them, put them in different groups, same groups. You decide all that. You don't need my help with that. But you have to do breakouts and make it very clear what they have to do. Next option is 2. Don't have time for this. Some of you, one person asked, how can I do peer instruction? Look, you can do anything with the students if you bring it to their point of proficiency. And believe me, I've taught brand new adult beginners with no literacy, and people who know me from way back know. So I could do something with you when we get the follow-up area. We can have a little group on people who work on that, and I can show you how they can even do peer instruction. But for now, we're going to move on, but I'll give you a link. Marshall and Rodriguez, oh, actually, that's an article you already read. But anyway, we can go on to the next slide. Okay. Now, next is share out. If they do breakouts, they have to do share out. It makes them accountable. If they know that when they come back, they have to share with the class. Now, you won't have time. Some of you have a huge class. Just pick a couple, but they won't know who you pick. And just make sure that it's fair. This time, this group, another group next time. Okay, we don't have, again, sorry to keep mentioning time, SHAC. This is a wonderful way to teach students how to give appropriate peer feedback. Most people, peer feedback is just, oh, it was good, or yeah, wonderful. No, that is not helping. So my colleague, Khalid Fethi, and there's a link in the chat to the article. I hope you're keeping up with me on the links. I'm not looking. share, help, ask, comment, and students of all types have grabbed onto this model. It's so simple, and yet it really helps. It's not totally free, but not totally controlled. And I have them do it for anything, discussions, readings, share outs like here. But I highly recommend it. And we can talk more about it at another time. Let's go on. The next is preview and discovery. Preview and discovery is the key. A lot of you said, what do we do if they don't do the pre-work? Well, some of them aren't going to do it. I mean, they're not going to do it in the beginning, but what's going to happen is they're going to get peer pressure. They're going to get what the kids call, I don't know if any of you are kids. Kids is anybody under 30, by the way, or higher. Okay, FOMO. You all know FOMO? Fear of missing out. So what happens is you don't get punitive with pre-work, but you do all positive things to make them want to do the pre-work. Least of which is to make it fantastic and not boring. Maybe you are like a show person. That's okay. Everyone isn't extroverted like me. But I mean, you can be you and put in cartoons and make little jokes and stuff. Just practice being dynamic. And they'll say, oh, did you see that? And they'll say, no, I didn't. Oh, you got to go watch it. They'll do it. But here's another way. This is a great way. You give them like a trailer for a movie. You give them a preview. You take them into the video, show them a little bit of it, a good part. And then you show them the reading, show them a real cool paragraph or piece or sentence or word, wherever level you teach. Show them a little peek at it. It does a lot. It pre-teaches. It gives them curiosity. It gets them motivated. And it also gives you an idea of what they understand if you ask questions at the same time. I always ask them a question, and their answers tell me where they are with their prior knowledge, and that helps me. Sometimes I even add a question or do something to the pre-work based on preview and discovery. Don't skip it. Whenever I don't have time and I skip it, that's usually the one that I first skip. You can't skip it. Okay, next. Assignments. I'm not going to spend any time at all. You give an assignment, you make it really clear. The assignment is the pre-work for the next time, but you have to make it very clear. Because it's online, it's never as clear as when it's in person. So I always do it in 3 places. I do it in the synchronous class when we meet. I do it online in the space that they go online for the class, wherever that is. And then I send it to them. However you send things to them, I send it to them. So it's very important to do all 3. But whatever your assignment is, make sure they don't say, I couldn't find it. What is it? Because that will drive you crazy. Okay, next, the last step is reflection. They have to reflect. So this is the last piece. Now, it's not an exit. You guys don't do that. The K-12 people, they all have this thing called an exit ticket. Anyway, what it is it's not a specific thing. And they can't say learned a lot. I'll erase it. If they say learned a lot, out of there. I need something specific. I want to know what you learned, a specific thing you learned. And it's all transparent. So they all see what everybody else learned. So isn't that wonderful? They get an array. And they don't put the same thing. They put different things, what resonated with them. It's amazing. It really is. Okay, now we're going to put some links in the chat, 3 links in the chat. Whoa. Okay, so, and then the next slide. So the links I'm going to show you are your own reflection, and we're going to also in a minute put up the poll, your own reflection on this session. Whoa, on this session. It's just 3 questions, but I need it, and we need it, and you need it, because it's going to help you reflect on what happened just now. The second link, I hope you all answer it, okay? The other link, I hope when I go in a minute, I'll see a bunch of people already answered. Okay, the next is where we're going to meet. Now, historically, when I teach, I mean, I did like 300 people the other day and only 40 of them came. That's okay, I understand, that's still 40 people. If you want to come, I'm there. There's my code, and I'll show you what it looks like. I'm going to show you what it looks like. And I need to share my screen so I can show what it looks like. And also in the chat is my email. I'm very accessible, extremely accessible usually. Today I had some issues. PlayPosit is what I use to make videos, but I'm just showing you that briefly, but you may not be interested. You could use Edpuzzle. If anyone in the chat knows how to make videos with questions in another platform, otherwise, please post the PlayPosit link. And then also there's Edpuzzle, and put in the chat if you personally know another place where you can do video. This is Perusal. It's my new favorite friend. And I'm just going to show you how to log in. God, my computer is not cooperating. This is outrageous. It's just not letting me. I don't know. This morning I do have to tell you, this is not an issue for me, but what's happening is I can't get in to show you because something happened with my computer. Yes.
Helaine, I think we can just maybe dial back on the engagement technologies and,
okay. I just wanted to
a little wrap up on your slides and then move into questions.
Yeah. Okay. All right. But the reason I want you to see Perusal, you won't see it right now. Go ahead. That's okay. You can go back to the PowerPoint. Is that I made a class for you and it says World-Led Pro Literacy. It's your class and I want you to go there if you can and I'll be there. Okay. And you can go to the next slide. I was doing step 6, preview and discovery. That was what that was going to be. Okay. All right. So, so that's it. And if you go in there, I'll also be talking about these 4 qualities. Equity with the helping hand activity. I'll talk to you. You can click equity. And then I'm going to talk to you about enrichment, which means it's okay to have the kids there, the cat, the dog. Anybody can be there. Let's be welcoming. I've got a list of activities and I've talked to you about them in Perusal on a video and articles. And the third is engagement. Anything they can do without you will make them feel more engaged. They really want to do that. And I have ideas for that for low tech, high tech, no tech, all those different things. And last is empowerment. If you provide the first 3 E's, they will feel empowered. And the last slide, I kind of say creating fertile spaces is my mantra. And the next slide gives you the theoretical framework for that. That's what we would be doing as our next step, either in Perusal or in some other way. And I think that's it, folks. So thank you. We'll go to Q&A.
All right. Thank you, Helaine. That was real informative. And just to remind folks, we had a lot of questions about links and things like that. So we're going to be sending out a follow-up email, hopefully on Monday. We get everything together over the weekend, but by Tuesday at the latest. And that follow-up email is going to have a link to the recording of the webinar. It's going to have the slides. So any of you who sent messages asking to go back and take pictures of the slide or the SOFLA model you see here, you'll have that. We will also include a transcript of the chat, so you'll be able to follow those conversations. And we'll include a list of the resources, including all of the links that were shared. So you'll be able to get all of that in the follow-up email. So Helaine, I know you had a few kind of questions. People were asked to submit questions in the pre-work, and then we also have some questions from the actual webinar. So why don't we start with some of the questions from the pre-work. And one of the ones that you kind of had, I know, was how can we adopt or adapt SOFLA to our adult learners in ESL classes and or tutoring in small group contexts?
Yes, okay. Well, I think that some of that we started to address today in the webinar. However, what you need to do is simply put things, I know it sounds simplistic, but if you think of your students and what they can do, there's nothing about this model that pertains to a particular level of English or language or literacy. You can do it with pictures. You can have pictures and have them organize pictures, or show a picture if they're on their phone using WhatsApp, share a picture of an animal, share a picture of an animal if you have your own animal. I mean, you can do things at whatever level you have in your class in terms of English proficiency. So I hope that gets across. What I'm doing here is not instruction, it's instructional design, and there's a big difference. Instructional design, if it's well done, can be adapted to any instructional context. It's true, I think, in terms of my own, because naturally we all do, but I happen to know your context really well, and so I can certainly help you to develop more specific ideas for your context. And it's totally doable, okay? Tutoring is different. I have one student I'm working with now, just the student. SOFLA, not really, because, you know, it's a tutoring situation. You're targeting specific areas with that student. What I might do is, if I were going to try and do SOFLA, and I just thought of this second, is link your tutor, tutee, with another tutee at the same level, maybe in a totally different part of the country. And if they could together form a little tutor connection, you can work with that other teacher, and you can each tutor your own student to do a differentiation, but the interaction among students that's so important for engagement online could happen tutor to tutor. So that would be my answer to that question.
Thanks. I think that's a good recommendation, and also a good reminder that this is a model. It's not a curriculum, and so it's not level dependent. It's really kind of taking that model and folding in level dependent content and activities into this overall model. Great. Patty, do you have a question from folks?
I do, actually. There are now posted on the Q&A. Thank you so much, Matthew. You transferred one of the questions, but one that was already posted from the beginning is flipped learning solely out of the classroom? And is this similar to all, is this similar at all to the reciprocal teaching?
Okay, when you say out of the classroom, we're talking about an online version. And so those 4 questions I showed you at the beginning where it said in class, out of class, those 4 questions apply to not an online. But if it's online, out of class means online in cyberspace, and in class for synchronous, for this model, means also online and cyberspace. So SOFLA is totally, it's if you're totally online. Now, you can use it in person as well, because whatever would be the synchronous class becomes the in-person class. And that's, in fact, I mean, when I started flipping, that's how I did it. I never even thought about doing anything online. My students did their pre-work online, but then they came in class to meet me. So I'm not sure if I'm answering the question. As far as reciprocal, I vaguely remember the term, but I never really got into it. So maybe someone can put in the chat whether you think it applies to reciprocal teaching. As far as asynchronous, no. Someone said, oh, can't it be done all asynchronously? I'm not an advocate of that. And part of the reason is they need to see you. More than 50% of communication is nonverbal. And our students, more than anyone, need to see the nonverbal communication. They need to see you. They need to see you smile. They need to see your gestures. And so I'm totally an advocate of a synchronous class. They also need to hear your voice and work with you in real time, not just on a video. You know, even research with babies shows that they learn the language better from a real person, not a video of a real person. They actually can make that distinction. And I think our students as adults need you. So asynchronous is not my deal, sorry. Okay.
Thank you, Helaine. The question was actually answered. They already shared with us. So the next question is, when beginning to use flipped classes, how many times would you suggest you start pre-work in the class versus out of class?
Well, it's your students. I mean, in elementary school, sometimes they only do it in class. Some of the little ones, they do an in-class flip as one of their stations in the classroom. So you have to go by your students. If I had my Hmong students again, I might do it for quite a while in class, because they're learning all the technology skills, they're learning English, and at a very, very beginning level. So I would do a lot of it in class, and then I would take my cue from them. They would say, oh, come on, we want to do it out. We want to do it, try it at home. We want to try it. And then you might try it and then come back, see how it went, do more in class. It's you, you're the teacher, you decide. This model is there for you. Nobody's going to lean over you and say, you need to do X number of times. I mean, for my students, I do it once. But I'm teaching teachers, I'm teaching you guys. I do it in class once to show them how to do it, and then they're done. Okay, next question.
So Helaine, this is another one that kind of came through the questions that were submitted in the pre-work, but
Yeah.
just kind of thinking about the SOFLA model, and in these days, how are there ideas that you have for making the SOFLA model less software specific, or kind of the counter to that is good strategies for supporting students in being able to access and master that technology so that the SOFLA model is more rewarding and effective for them, and the technology doesn't have the possibility of standing in the way of that?
Right. Okay. There was a wonderful question. How do you make SOFLA less software centric? And I guess I have to say it's not software centric. So it doesn't really matter which tools you use, or even whether you use tools. You could do the whole thing with WhatsApp is a tool, I guess, but you could do the whole thing with the phone. You don't have to make it very techy. And for example, I've worked with Slife and on how this was for K-12 more, but there are ways to engage them with no tech, low tech, and more tech. And you know, that you actually go by what they can do, and it doesn't have to be. It really doesn't have to draw on their. I'm just saying, I have some slides here, but it's going to be hard to. I have some slides that show low tech, high tech, and no tech. If you want to let me share one more time. I know we're short on time.
Oh,
but,
we're fine. We're fine.
Okay. I have a few slides. They're not going to be like amazingly gorgeous because I'm actually sharing. I'm actually sharing a PowerPoint that's not. Someday I'll tell you what happened to me, guys. But anyway. Okay, so this is not my usual way to share a PowerPoint, but this was a session on summer activities for Slife that I did for Nice TESOL. There's my no-tech ideas, my low-tech ideas. This is for Slife, and my techie ideas. I also talk about virtual field trips here, which is one of these. You can have these slides. I also have the audio books, sample of text, which is fantastic. This is ProLingua. And the ProLingua books are with CDs and little books, physical books. And they're great because the chunking, you know how students who are just learning to read, they need to learn to get meaningful chunks. The meaningful chunks are linguistic. It looks like poetry, but it's not. It's prose, but it's chunked linguistically. I don't get anything from ProLingua, but I've never found another publisher that chunked linguistically. And that's not tech at all. Well, unless you count the audio. The audio you can get online, or you can get the audio in a physical CD. I have all the books and CDs, and I've used to use them in my in-person class. Okay, and then you can see all the tools there. Okay, thank you.
Perfect, Helaine, and I think that's great. Thank you so much for offering to share those slides with us as well. I was going to actually ask you if you would be willing to do that, and you beat me to it. So we're getting close to the top of the hour, so I want to just kind of take a few minutes to remind everybody that our next webinar will be on Friday, October 23rd at 1 p.m. and we're going to have another great webinar session. This one is going to be a couple of folks from Literacy Pittsburgh are going to talk about how they started a YouTube channel as a way to deliver instruction. They created one for ESL instruction and one for family literacy instruction. And they're going to talk to you about their entire process of why they decided to do it, kind of what they hope to accomplish with it. They're going to talk about their technology that they use, equipment and software, and kind of the benefits that they've seen from doing that. So mark that on your calendar and keep a lookout for an e-blast announcing it. And I will say that everyone who attended this webinar, you are now automatically on our email list, so you'll get all the notifications for our webinars. Here you see the upcoming webinars that we're sponsoring at Pro Literacy. We're drawing on our webinars that we did in the spring, the ideas from the field, and you see we have them some things about reopening strategies, some new resources, Writing Ready and Tutor Ready, Bridging the Digital Divide, and would encourage you to go to proliteracy.org/webinars to see a calendar of our upcoming webinars, as well as being able to access recordings of previous webinars. And a recording of this webinar will also be posted there, as well as you receiving the link in your follow-up email. Jen, you want to talk about you guys?
Sure, thanks. So we do have some upcoming PD opportunities announcements too. Starting October 9th, we are going to be running webinars the second Friday. So feel free to register at edtech.worlded.org. And then we have just recently published a new edition of our distance education handbook. You can see the link here in the slides. It's at edtechbooks.org, and you could actually, if you go to the site, you could just do a search on ideal and distance, and that will come up. Stay tuned for more information coming out about a new curriculum that we're publishing next week. Self-paced microlearning on how to implement distance education. So thanks, Todd. Thanks, attendees. Thanks, everybody. And Helaine, thank you so much for your contributions today.
Jen, hold on just a second. So we normally, so you'll see that we are going to be sharing the webinar, recording of the webinar and the list of websites and all of that. Helaine has actually agreed to stick around to make sure that everybody's questions got answered. So we are going to cut off the questions so that we can't submit anymore, and we'll let Helaine go, eventually. But she's agreed to stick around to make sure everybody's questions got answered. So we're going to take an additional like 10 minutes or so.
Amazing.
Get everybody's questions answered. And if you want to stick around and hear the answers to those questions, that's great. If not, they'll be included on the webinar recording.
Great. That's just wonderful.
Okay. Patty, I think you had another question for her.
Yes, actually, it's two questions, but I think they can be answered back to back. But one of our attendees, and I'm sure it applies to many, they expressed that their experience is that many of their learners do not complete homework. So would it be fair to flip the classroom? Oops, the question just disappeared.
I answered it. Okay, so the idea is that they just don't do the I'm sorry, I didn't know it disappeared when I answered. Okay, so everybody asks that. And here's my answer, is that if they miss something, you can't give in. I know it's tough love. What you have to do is you have to have faith in the model and faith in the other students. And those students who don't do it, eventually they'll either unfortunately disappear, which doesn't happen much, or they'll realize, hey, that's the class, I need to do it. And they will find a time to do it. They can do it unless they're driving. I mean, they can do it on a bus. They can do it, while they're having breakfast. They can find a time to do it. And if you give in, you won't be able to flip. You can't flip. And that's why the preview is important. You get them excited, like I said, and fear of missing out, peer pressure. Give them a buddy, someone who's very conscientious, and they can check with each other, how Weight Watchers and stuff like that. But whatever tricks and great ideas you use them. They will do it eventually. You can't be punitive, but you can't give up. That's my answer. And come talk to me if you have a problem individually, and I will help you.
Thank you, Helaine. And the other follow-up question was the one that you probably saw posted. How can students answer the questions in the pre-work besides the Google form? Are there any other posting software?
Yeah. Actually, I don't use a Google form. I use a Google form. Some of you were doing tutor training. I use the Google form only for PD. I use it for module training or even one-shot webinar like you. But my real pre-work is usually in a video in PlayPosit. Like I said, you upload a video, you can put it in YouTube, you can put it wherever you want, but you put questions in. And then the other pre-work I use is in Perusal, which is for readings. It's free. You can put up any reading you want. You could put up the ProLingua books. They have to get them from the publisher, but then you put them up. So that's what I use, is videos and shared reading. But you can use Google Forms. You can use anything you want for the pre-work. It's not dependent. Again, we're not software centric here. You can use anything that works for your population for the pre-work, okay? You can use a messaging app to give them the pre-work, okay? Yeah.
I think
And
that's
one
a,
last,
oh, go
okay.
ahead, Patty.
No, go ahead, Todd.
I was just going to say, I think that's a great idea. I know from some of our presentations that a lot of programs are using messaging software like Remind or WhatsApp. You talked about WhatsApp. So I think kind of recognizing that we can do the pre-work using those things that students might already be familiar with as well. That's great.
Yeah, yes.
Go ahead, Patty. You had one more question?
Yes, there was one final question that I found in the chat, which is, how can I implement flipped learning when my students' time is only counted when they are interacting with a teacher online or in class?
You know, I saw that question. I used to teach an educational opportunity center, and I had to take attendance, and they got paid to come to class. It was crazy. So I know there are all kinds of programs out there, but what I do, for example, I count my pre-work as contact hours for my class. So you might be able to get rules changed. Remember, this is a crazy time, and you could advocate and you could say, that's contact hours. They're contacting with me asynchronously. I'm there with them, especially in perusal. You really are there. The other ones, you're creating a video lesson. They might say, well, how does that count? But you see, I think it counts. They're learning from you, and you're using an innovative model. And if your administrators don't buy that argument, I will personally talk to them.
Well, that's good to know. And I think one of the things to kind of keep in mind is that a lot of the things that you have mentioned, a lot of the tools, that there are ways to see if someone has signed in, logged on, accessed something.
Yeah.
So there are ways to kind of track attendance even for outside work.
Yes, in both the ones I use, and I can only speak for myself, it shows me when they went on, how long they spent, what they responded. I get all that data. That's what I said earlier. You need the data so you can plan your next lesson. I know exactly what they did online. I can document it. So that's what you want. You want to be able to document their time. Yeah.
Great. So Helaine, one last question, and this kind of came up through the submitted questions. And it's really kind of, you've given us a great introduction to SOFLA and have shared a lot of resources and have actually been very, very generous with your time and willingness to talk to folks outside of this webinar. But if someone really wanted to delve deeply into SOFLA and learn more about how to implement it in their classroom or in their literacy program or school or organization, how would they approach it? Do you have any kind of strategies for starting out or resources that you would recommend people take a look at?
Well, if you go into perusal, I have a lot of resources there. I mean, and videos of me training people. So, I mean, a lot of that is in perusal. I keep saying perusal, but that's where everything is. And I can continually add materials there. Okay, so I think that's important. But for getting started, you need a buddy. I would suggest, in fact, one of my articles, I don't think I gave you a link to it, talks about 6 steps to get started flipping, 6 recommendations. I'll have to get you that link. That's an older article I published a couple of years ago with Ilka Kostka. It's the history, TESOL, flip learning in TESOL, the first 5 years. But it's not SOFLA, it's just flipping. But there are recommendations, and one of them is start slow. Don't flip all your lessons. Try it a little bit and see how it goes. And students need to be adapted to it as well. Also, get a buddy. Find someone else who wants to try it. You know. Also, you know, I'm always there to support you. Unfortunately, there aren't too many other people yet, but anyway, there are a few of us, and you know, we're there to help. But be patient with yourself. It takes time to make a change. Going back to Darwin. You want to go back. See what you can do that's equivalent. Accept the limitations. See what the advantages might be, and come up with something new. Okay, that's my advice.
And I think that's great advice. And I think a lot of us kind of learned those, a lot of those steps, especially the pieces of finding a buddy and starting small as we were trying to implement distance education for the first time back in the spring. So I think that's it.
There's one more question here.
Okay.
What's the difference? It says, what's the difference between flipped classroom and SOFLA? Okay, so I took flipped classroom and I took SOFLA. I'm sorry, I took flipped learning or flipped classroom and online learning, and I merged them and I created SOFLA. So SOFLA is part online, part flip, and they go together. I used to teach online, but not flip. I used to teach flip, but in person. And then I developed SOFLA. And if you look at the acronym itself, the words in the acronym, maybe someone should type it in there to be very clear what SOFLA is. Someone said it was an unfortunate acronym. I'm glad this is anonymous. I don't know who you are. I think it's a good acronym. Synchronous, online, flipped learning approach. So that's what it stands for. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Helaine. You've been very generous and very generous with your time, and we've had great comments in the chat room about what people have been able to learn from this webinar. So thank you again. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And again, look for your follow-up email that'll have all of these resources in it Monday or Tuesday at the latest.
And do the reflection. I only see 14 people who did it.
And
14.
do the reflection, and we will include the reflection link in the follow-up email. So
great.
Do the reflection, do the work. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Take care. Have a great weekend.
Okay. Bye-bye.